The train wailed like a dying animal and vanished into the wind-blown dusk, leaving behind only the hiss of steam and the faint rattle of a broken world. Clara May stood alone on the platform, her widow's veil fluttering like smoke around her pale face, hands clutched tight around a worn wicker basket. Inside were 2 pairs of shoes, her own, scuffed and resoled thrice, and a tiny pair tied with pink ribbon, never worn again since the fever took her daughter in the Missouri winter. She had come west following her sister Sadie's letter, though even that now trembled in her pocket like a cruel joke. Clara hadn't known what she expected. Perhaps a porch to rest her bones on, a kind word, a cup of coffee. But Sadie was gone, left behind only a note tacked to the rail station post. Asterisk couldn't bear the sight of him. If you want the life so bad, take it, asterisk. That was 3 hours ago. Clara sat now on the steps near the telegraph office, boots dusted in red clay, eyes dry from having no tears left to give. The town, if it could be called that, was little more than a mercantile, a saloon with peeling green shutters, and a church whose bell had rusted into silence. Everyone passed her like she was a stain. Then came the girls. 2 of them, no taller than her hip, no older than 9. They had the same fiery red braids and moon-round eyes, dresses patched with care, shoes near falling apart. "You want a home," said one of them. June, she'd learn later, with the confidence of someone used to speaking plain. "And we need a bride for our father," said the other, Lottie, quieter but staring hard. Clara blinked. "I'm not sure I heard you right." "You did," June nodded. "Our pa don't talk much, but he's lonely, and you look like you need supper." Clara stared at them, unsure whether to laugh or cry. But they took her by the hands, so small, so warm, and led her past the gossiping glances, the creaking saloon door, through town and out to where the dirt road split like a scar through cattle grass. Their grip was gentle but sure, as though they'd already decided she belonged. The ranch was nothing grand, just a house with sagging shutters and a barn leaning sideways, like it had grown weary of standing tall. A windmill creaked slowly, catching what breeze it could. Chickens scattered as they approached, and from within the barn came the rhythm of axe against wood. Boaz Callahan emerged shirt-sleeved and sweat-slicked, beard thick and grizzled, eyes like 2 hard stones. He was a bear of a man, wide, silent, unmoved by the sight of Clara. "You ain't her," he said, after a long silence. "No," Clara answered, standing straighter, though her heart trembled. "I'm not." He turned back toward the log he'd been splitting. "You can take the loft, if you work." That was it. No welcome, no judgment. Just the rules of the house carved into the air like wood grain. That night, Clara slept in the hay, with a wool blanket folded neat beside her. The stars peeked through the roof slats. Somewhere below, a kettle hissed, and the girls giggled as they braided each other's hair. Boaz said nothing, just stirred the coals once before bed and glanced once at her direction, as if to say, "I see you, but I ain't asking questions." Clara rose before dawn, milked the goats with cold fingers, chopped onions with tears that weren't for the onions, and scrubbed the porch till her knuckles turned raw. The work kept her from thinking about what she had become, a woman with no child, no husband, and now, no name on a marriage certificate. The townfolk noticed soon enough. Mrs. Teller from the mercantile narrowed her eyes the next time Clara came for flour. "Ain't you the sister of that high-strung girl? The one who ran off?" Clara just nodded. "Humph. Well, we'll see how long you last." By Sunday, whispers floated from every pew in the church. Some said Boaz had taken a stray woman and like a cow needing shelter, others that Clara was scheming to steal his land. But the girls still sat proudly beside her, one on each side, their little hands tucked into hers like roots finding earth. Boaz didn't go to church. He never did. Back on the ranch, Clara kept her work. She hemmed the girls' skirts, stitched their dolls' heads back on, left fresh biscuits on the stove. She never asked for more than space to sleep and the dignity of useful hands. Boaz noticed, not with words, but with gestures, a pot of coffee left near her basket, a clean towel hung where she could reach, a dog-eared novel left beside her bedroll. One night, she found a sprig of wild lavender resting on the table, and though no one claimed it, she knew. Once, she caught him watching her as she brushed Lottie's hair by the fire. His gaze held something unreadable. She didn't hold it long, just nodded and kept brushing. There were no romantic gestures, no flutters of flirtation, only the slow, warm rhythm of coexistence. One afternoon, rain came sudden and fierce, bending the wheat fields low. The wind howled, the chickens scattered, and from the storm limped a dog, skinny, muddy, bleeding from the paw. Clara didn't ask permission. She brought it in, cradled it in burlap, cleaned the wound, fed it scraps. Boaz stood by the door, arms folded. "He just needs kindness," she said, not looking up. After a pause, Boaz muttered, "So do some folks." She met his eyes then, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. A shared ache, perhaps, recognition, or the quiet understanding that both had been carrying too much grief for too long. That night, as the wind died and the storm passed, Clara lay awake in the loft. Below, the fire crackled, the dog whined in its sleep, and the ranch creaked like old bones settling into comfort. And then, soft footsteps on the barn stairs. Boaz didn't climb all the way, just stood halfway, his silhouette lit by lantern glow. "I know you didn't come here for me," he said, voice low, "but the girls, they've taken to you. And I reckon the dog, too." She held her breath. "I ain't good at talking, ain't good at knowing what's right sometimes. But if you're thinking of leaving, tell me now." Clara sat up, her hair loose around her shoulders, and the rain still dripping outside like the slow rhythm of memory. She didn't answer. She only reached behind her and pulled out the little pair of shoes with pink ribbon, held them to her chest, and stared into the dark. Outside, the wind shifted, and Boaz took one more step up. Boaz never spoke of that night, but something shifted in the bones of the house after. The silence between them softened, like snow melting off a rooftop, unnoticed until water pooled at the steps. He began leaving the door unlatched when he came back from town, and sometimes Clara would find firewood split just the way she liked it, small and clean for fast burning, stacked on the porch before dawn. Still, the whispers thickened like dust in corners. Mrs. Teller had seen them together at the feed store, Clara holding Lottie's hand, Boaz standing behind with his sack of flour slung over his shoulder. It wasn't scandalous, not yet, but it was odd. And in a town like this, oddness spread like wildfire through prairie grass. "She's not even the real bride," Mrs. Teller muttered behind her hand as Clara passed with a basket of eggs. "Just the sister. The leftover." Clara heard. She always heard, but she no longer flinched. The girls had begun calling her Ma when they were tired, when they forgot to be careful. And Boaz still didn't speak much, but his presence had become her weather, constant, grounding, warm when he stood too close. One brittle afternoon, with the sky bruised violet and the air dry as parchment, Sadie returned. She arrived not by train, but on horseback, her fine city boots caked in trail dust, her face pinched with fury and embarrassment. Clara saw her before the girls did, standing by the barn door with a hoe in hand, sweat dampening her neckline. Sadie swung down from the saddle and tossed her hat aside like it disgusted her. "You took my place," she said flatly. Clara met her gaze but didn't speak. "I didn't mean it," Sadie snapped, jaw tight. "That note. He was too much. Too fat, too silent, too this." She gestured to the ranch like it was a sickness. "But you stayed, why?" Clara wiped her brow with her sleeve, then said quietly, "Because someone needed me to." Sadie scoffed. "You think this is noble? Playing mother to kids that ain't yours? Laying low like some dog waiting to be scratched." At that moment, Boaz emerged from the house, Lottie on his shoulders and June skipping behind. He froze when he saw Sadie, his face unreadable. Sadie squared her shoulders. "You owe me," she told him. "I came all the way out here. I wasted weeks of my life. I want money for my travel, and I want Clara gone." Boaz set Lottie down gently. His eyes, calm as stone, settled on Sadie. "You left," he said. "Clara didn't." "She tricked you," Sadie hissed. "No," he said, quieter now. "She healed things." Sadie stared at them both, at the girls clinging to Clara's skirt, at the man who'd never looked at her with half as much steadiness. Then she turned, mounted, and rode off without another word, her anger disappearing into the golden hills like a storm that hadn't quite broken. That night, the sky cracked open. Lightning split the black horizon, thunder chasing it with hollow footsteps. Clara tucked the girls into bed early, windows latched, the dog whining under the table. Boaz stood at the door watching the wind tear branches from the oak like paper. The air was strange, too still between the gusts, too sharp in the nose. Then came the smoke. It slithered under the floorboards first, faint and bitter. Then the girls screamed. The barn. June shouted, already out the door. Lottie, she went to get her doll. Clara's heart stopped. She bolted into the rain, Boaz behind her like thunder incarnate. The barn was ablaze, flames leaping like dancers on the roof, licking up the night. Clara's breath snagged in her throat. Lottie's inside, she screamed. Boaz didn't answer. He yanked off his coat, wrapped it around his arms, and plunged through the flame-framed doorway. Time cracked wide open. Every second dragged like a slow death. Clara stood in the rain, barefoot, her hands trembling so hard she couldn't even clasp them in prayer. She watched the roof groan, sagging, cinders raining down like stars. Then, a shape in the smoke. Boaz stumbled out, coughing, one arm around a soot-covered Lottie. Clara ran to meet them, pulled the child into her arms, sobbed against Boaz's chest as he swayed, blackened and burned and silent still. The barn collapsed behind them. That night, the fire stole the harvest tools, half the feed, and the old stallion. But it could not steal the living. Boaz lay on the couch wrapped in salve-stained bandages. Clara sat beside him, cooling his brow with lavender water, her fingers soft against his cracked lips. You saved her, she whispered. He tried to speak, failed, then nodded once. I never asked you to, she added. I couldn't lose, he swallowed hard. Or you. They didn't say more. For days, the house was quiet except for the wind and the steady breathing of the girls pressed against Clara's sides each night. Townsfolk came to see the wreckage. Some brought food, others just brought stares. But Clara stood straighter now, chin lifted, as she swept the ashes into a corner and planted sunflower seeds by the scorched fence post. One afternoon, as Boaz slowly made his way back to the porch on stiff legs, June tugged Clara's apron and asked, Are you going to stay forever? Clara knelt to her height, smiled. I'm already here. That evening, with the sky streaked in tangerine and gold, Boaz stepped beside her as she shelled peas. He reached down, took a single pod from her bowl, and pressed it into her palm. You made this place feel like home. She didn't speak, just leaned her cheek against the back of his hand and let the silence settle between them like a blessing. Later, alone in her room, Clara pulled out the small shoes with pink ribbon and placed them beside the window. The sun touched them gently, turning them to gold. And then, 3 knocks at the door. She opened it to find Mrs. Teller standing awkwardly on the step, hands clasped tight around a parcel of cornbread. They say you saved the child, she said, eyes darting. Thought you might like this. Clara took the parcel without a word, smiled a little. And behind her, the girls giggled, the dog barked, and Boaz called her name. Just once, but it rang through her like church bells. Some stories don't begin with love. They begin with loss. And some homes aren't built from timber and nails, but from the bravery of choosing to stay when you could have run. Clara turned back toward the door, and for the first time in years, it felt like hers.